The House believes that prison should be abolished, and in my argument, I'm defining prison according to Austin McCormick in the Journal of Criminal Law and Criminology as an institution and a building or vessel of the government for persons convicted of felonies and serving sentences, generally speaking, for more than a year. This means that the term prison does not refer to small county jails, reformatories, camps, farms, and special institutions for the mentally insane, but prison only refers to larger county jails. Now that we have a definition for what prison is, it is vital that we make clear the role of prison. I think that it's a general consensus that prison should not be some type of cruel and unusual punishment, but should be an institution that is fair and serves a function of correcting criminals to make them productive members of society upon their release. When individuals break laws that uphold the common good, prison is supposed to be a punishment and teaching mechanism that teaches criminals to be more socially cooperative and generous. But according to first-hand accounts of prisons from people like Peter Gilderloos, the only thing that prison teaches is obedience, which sounds like a positive at first, but when actually viewed analytically is a bad thing, because prison does correct people, but not in the correct way. See, prison serves as a constant threat against all who would oppose what governments and corporations do with our collective resources, and it is naive to believe that prison is only a threat to those opposers who break the law. What it all boils down to is that our government is corrupted, leaving a lack of legal means to fundamentally change the government. You must understand that elections are just a means of weeding out representatives, and instead of the winner being the one who has the public's best interest in mind, it's a survival of the richest. See, if you want the government to pass a gun law of democracy is great when you gather up hundreds of thousands of dollars in donations to support a representative. But if you want to live in a society that truly values human interests over corrupt government or corporate interests, then you're out of luck. The government doesn't represent you. See, you do not consent to be governed, but you are a subject of the government. The government is not really based on our participation, but actually functions more without us. Therefore, the only option we have is to consent, and that's not really consent, that's just submission. And I'm sure that somebody's going to argue that we have freedom of speech and that's our weapon to change society, but it's completely putting aside the fact that freedom of speech is not really free. If you talk back in the first grade, you get in trouble. If you talk back in high school, you get detention. It is instilled in us from a young age not to resist, and then when you grow up and do resist and speak out and protest against the government, then you supposedly have the freedom of speech to change, then you get arrested. And of course, I'm not saying that the only role of prison is to punish people that go against the grain of the government, which brings me to my next harm. Prison should perform a service to society, but what it actually does is disempower minorities, especially blacks and Latinos. And I know I'm running out of time, but I'll be brief and expound on this later. But blacks and Latinos are disproportionately imprisoned in this country. Of the 2.3 million people incarcerated in the U.S., blacks represent 1 million of them. And together, blacks and Latinos represent 58% of all prisoners, although representing only a quarter of the U.S. population. 5 times as many whites are using drugs as African Americans, yet African Americans are sent to prison for drug offenses at 10 times the rate of whites. African Americans serve virtually as much time in prison for drug offenses as whites do for violent crimes. This is a huge negative in society, because when these blacks and Latinos get out of prison, that they are rendered second-class citizens in society, and they basically have their civil rights that they fought hard for taken away from them, since they can now be discriminated against for jobs and things like that. And as I said before, because of the corruption of government, these laws that make these unjust disparities possible will not change. Prison should be abolished because it is not serving the function that it is there to serve. It is not making society any better. It is preventing us from speaking up for what is right. It is a form of resistance. It is a form of resistance and giving the government the power to do things like creating laws that allow for unjust racial disparities in prison. Because you cannot convince me that blacks and Latinos are just bad people. And when I say abolish prison, I'm not just saying criminals should go unpunished, but I'm suggesting that alternatives should be used, like reformatories, camps, farms, and special institutions for the mentally insane. As an educational debate, it is imperative that we learn to teach that when something is wrong, we cannot just sit back and let the misdeeds continue.